We'll put this up on YouTube for people who weren't able to come tonight. You're all about to take the Bodhisattva vow. The Refuge vow. And this is a wonderful thing to do in its own right, and also it's a step toward the future. What comes after the Refuge vow is the Bodhisattva vow. You can take that in a few months, which has a somewhat different rationale behind it. And then those two vows are prerequisite for entering the Vajrayana, for those of you who decide you are going to do that. So this is the first step, an important one. I'm going to just go through the chapter that I think most of you have read, and we'll pause and have a discussion. And if you could put up a hand, do you know how to do that? Where is it? Reactions. Whenever you want to say something, here, I'm putting up a hand, you see? Up there in my left-hand corner, it's under reactions. And okay. So there we go. You're basically aligning yourself with a 2,600-year-old tradition of people who have become Buddhists, many of whom have awoken from confusion, from suffering, and become awakened. In fact, what the teachings say at the highest level is that we confused samsaric people are but a small fraction, tiny infinitesimal fraction of the number of beings in the universe, because when people get enlightened, well, they aren't beings anymore. They discover egolessness, selflessness, and there are uncountable numbers of them. So the purpose of taking refuge is to awaken from confusion and to associate oneself with wakefulness. This is the basic modus operandi, basic motivation. So by taking refuge, we're committing ourselves to enlightenment, which basically means committing ourselves to freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the tyranny of our neurotic minds. Stepping out into the real world. We're giving up shopping. By that, term Rinpoche means back in the day, people were shopping around. That still happens today for a spiritual path that they felt that was most appropriate for them. And everybody tried a little of this, a little of that. And then eventually those who settled down into Buddhism took refuge vows and gave up the shopping. And he feels that's very important, was very important, and is to commit yourself to a path that you're digging one deep hole instead of a lot of little shallow ones. It also opens up the doors to understanding, because until you commit yourself to this path, your understanding is going to be less than once you have committed. So we're going to stick with this one discipline and flourish with it. We take a definite vow to enter a discipline of choicelessness. The choicelessness he refers to whenever you come present, right here, just now. The choice is not in the air. If you're just 100% here, and you can respond, you can listen to this voice and respond to the picture on your screen. And if I call on you, you can say something. Sarah, do you have any idea about this choicelessness?
No.
Let's do this for a minute. Everybody, just take a good posture. Your eyes are open. You can direct your gaze wherever you like and hold it steady there. Your awareness is here. You can see me on the whole your computer screen, all the environment around you and your room, all of it, and you hear the sounds. Now that I mention it, you can feel your bottom on the cushion or chair. Probably no smells or tastes, but you're right here in this space, and the space and the awareness are the same. And this is what's meant by choicelessness. When we go into choice, we're thinking, what about this? What about that? But when you're just aware and awake of this present moment, choice is out the window. It's not an issue. It's not something you've given up. It's just not there. Because awareness of life, of one's life, supplants it. So we're taking this vow to enter a discipline of choicelessness, when he says, which saves us a lot of money, because you don't have to pay for a lot of different lessons, a lot of energy and lots of superfluous thinking. See, the whole path is really coming into awareness out of thought. Thought is absolutely not necessary. And this is something that each one of us has to discover for ourselves. Thought is like an after remark. It's part of a chain. You don't even remember what you thought 5 minutes ago, I bet. It comes and it evaporates, and meanwhile, here we are. This is the reality. Us, this body, this room, this space. So he says, we begin with the Hinayana approach, the narrow path of simplicity and boredom. Remember, these teachings in Tibet were divided into 3 vehicles. Yana means vehicle. There's the Hinayana, which is the so-called lesser vehicle. Rinpoche felt it was absolutely essential, and he preferred to call it the foundational vehicle. There's the Mahayana, which literally means greater vehicle. Maha means great. And this embodies the doctrine of the Bodhisattva and Shunyata and more. Those doctrines are not present in the Hinayana. The Hinayana has no idea of Shunyata or Bodhisattva action. The Vajrayana goes beyond that, and it goes into the world of magic, that this whole world that we live in is a magical manifestation, a magical display, and we can play with it. And that's what the Vajrayana is all about, playing with this beautiful, phenomenal world with sanity, enlightened mind, and compassion. So he says, becoming a refugee is acknowledging that we are homeless and groundless. It is acknowledging that there is really no need for home or ground. Taking refuge is an expression of freedom, because as refugees we are no longer bounded by the need for security. We are suspended in no man's land, in which the only thing to do is relate with the teachings and ourselves and whatever presents itself to us. Schemes, philosophies, religious doctrine, stories about ourselves, all unnecessary. We're entering the world of reality, which is here now. It's part of us. So the refuge ceremony represents a final decision. You're going to take the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, as an example of what it is you can become. He's an example of a completely ordinary human being who achieved enlightenment. And we are all ordinary human beings, and we can do it too. And you take refuge in the Dharma as the teachings or the path, instructions on how to move forward. And then you take refuge in the Sangha as the community of fellow practitioners, so that you are walking alone together. He says, this ceremony marks the beginning of an odyssey of loneliness. The loneliness comes from the fact that we're alone with our own minds. Ultimately, you can get instructions from outside, from me or from some other, better teacher. And in the end, you have to sit on your cushion, live your life, drive your car, and it's you and you alone. Nobody else is in there with you. So he says it's a total commitment to oneself and the beginning of an odyssey of loneliness. Still, it also includes the inspiration of the preceptor, that's me, and his or her lineage. This is the lineage coming through me, and there are other people that do this too. The lineage means the Buddha was the first, and he passed it on, and people passed it on down, down, down through the ages. When we recited the lineage chant, just at the beginning of meditation, Great Vajradhara, Telo, Naro, and Marpa, Mila, Lord of Dharma, Gampopa, Nor of the 3 times omniscient Karmapa, and the lineage is very, very important. These teachings are handed down from one person to the next, like hot bread. That was the expression that Trungpa Rinpoche used. They can't just be gotten from a book. That's 2 weeks old bread, or however long it was that the guy who wrote the book did it. It has to be from one living person to another. That's the way the Dharma is transmitted. Okay. And also, each one of us in doing this is acknowledging our aloneness and not working for ourselves without leaning on anyone. We can each give each other friendship and support, but we can't fundamentally help each other. We have to, it's what takes place in our minds through study and your understanding of what you study, and through your meditation practice and the insights that you will have. You've already had and will have more as you tread this path. There are many practices in this path. One of them is an exercise in aloneness. You go off into retreat, solitary retreat, ideally in a place that is unfamiliar to you, a cabin in the woods, so that you don't have a lot of things that remind you of who you are. Welcome. Is it Suzanne? Yeah. And you sit and you meditate all day in solitary retreat. And as the only things you really do are you sit, you cook your food, you go to the bathroom, and you meditate. And that's a real exercise in aloneness. And he says you experience a sense of loneliness and aloneness, the sense that there is no savior, no help, no external savior. But at the same time, there is a sense of belonging. You belong to a tradition of loneliness where people work together. That's the Sangha. So this ceremony is important to mark the particular time and date on which your commitment takes place. He says it's a train without brakes and without reverse. So hold on to your hat. You have boarded it. The refuge ceremony marks your becoming a Buddhist, a non-theist. That doesn't mean you're an atheist. Atheism is another belief. Buddhism recommends no beliefs at all. It's very, very profound that way. The first time I met Trungpa Rinpoche years ago, he was being interviewed on the front lawn of this meditation center up in Vermont. It was then called Tail of the Tiger, but now it's called Kermit Churling. And some fellows, a couple of guys, had come down from Canada, from the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, to interview this exotic Tibetan Lama. And a fellow with a tape deck hanging from his shoulder and a microphone, and the other guy had a video camera. And he went up to Rinpoche and put the microphone in his face and asked him, Rinpoche, as a Buddhist, what do you believe in? And Rinpoche said, as a Buddhist, I don't believe in anything. And there was a great Buddhist in the 2nd century AD named Nagarjuna, who lived, 2,000 years ago. And he founded a school called Madhyamaka, which basically showed that you can't say anything really true. Words are just pointers to our experience. And Nagarjuna said, and those who cling to that view that Rinpoche said, no views, if you cling to that, that's another view. So no intellectual views and no understandings. Because meditation, the mind of meditation, the mind of reality, is without words. It's just here. We're all doing it right now. He says, now you're being shown the path and are beginning to work with a particular teacher. It is a joyous situation. And that teacher can be anybody who works for you. By taking refuge, you receive the Buddhist heritage into your system. You join that particular wisdom, which has existed for 2,600 years without interruption and without corruption. So you're taking refuge again in the Buddha, not as a savior, but as an example of an ordinary person who saw through the deceptions of life on all levels. I remember when he was teaching this and he said, the Buddha was such an ordinary person. And then he looked out at us and he said, you all want to be extraordinary. And we did. So the Buddha disciplined himself by working on his own mind, which was the source of all his chaos and confusion, and was also the source of awakening. And we do that too. He went through a lot of religious trips. Some of us here have done this, looking for what makes sense to us. Theism in India at the time, and then he worked on himself. So taking the Buddha, refuge in the Buddha, is realizing that our case history is in fact completely comparable to his. And maybe in this, the Buddhist Path of Awakening course, we'll do some biographies of other people who achieved enlightenment. Some really colorful characters like Tilopa and Naropa and Kukuripa and a whole bunch of them. And there is a very similar pattern to many, many of the lives. Being born in wealth, finding it not enough merely, going off in search of the spiritual enrichment, and finally finding the Buddhist path and treading it. This is such a common story for many of us, especially, as Americans, we are born into wealth, more or less. This is a very wealthy society. And Rinpoche felt that it was very, very appropriate for Buddhism to come to America, because people like us are so well off and have so much leisure time. We have the time to pursue the path, as opposed to people in Tibet who were engaged in survival, agriculture and husbandry, animal husbandry. And for them, they didn't have the time to get as neurotic as we do. And so he felt that Americans were very neurotic, yes, but also very available and open to the teachings, one of the teachings. So taking refuge in the Buddha is realizing our case history is in fact completely comparable to his. He won a victory over all kinds of materialism. And what that means, materialism is self-aggrandizement, that you believe in this self, which is false, according to Buddhism. There is no self. It's just a fiction, a creation of mind. It doesn't actually exist. And it's only there when you think about it, and then it disappears. And here we are. When you take that bite of candy and the taste fills your mouth, and the sense of I is not there, or whatever it may be. But Materialism, there are three kinds of materialism. They're embodied in the Tibetan tantric iconography, and they're called the three lords of materialism. They enslave human beings. They're one version of how confusion can be presented and understood. So there's the Lord of Form, the Lord of Speech, and the Lord of Mind. The Lord of Form, if you're imprisoned or dominated by the Lord of Form, you want to manipulate your physical world, including your own body, but the world around you, to achieve some kind of benefit or heaven. And so you might pursue wealth, good food, drink, physical health, whatever it might be, all to the purpose of building oneself up. It can also go the other way. Back in the day when I met Rinpoche, a lot of people, hippies, were giving up all their possessions. There was a hippie slogan, don't own anything you can't fit in your VW bug. And I remember Gary Snyder, the poet, going to Japan and meditating with the mountain yogis naked. And he was very proud of that. This is can be a kind of materialism of form, self-aggrandizement, egotism. Now, the Lord of Speech has to do with the manipulation of ideologies to bolster your ego. And that means that, so for instance, you subscribe to being a Buddhist and all the Buddhist doctrines, you can pervert that into the Lord of Mind. It could be subscription to a political ideology. I'm a Democrat, and I feel good about that. It could be subscription to anything. I was a student when I met Rinpoche. I had just been a student in graduate school studying Chinese communism, which I now think is the most monolithic and powerful example of the Lord of Speech of materialism that has ever been on the planet. It's people ordering their lives meticulously according to the sayings of Chairman Mao. And there were loudspeakers in villages, blasting out the Red Book. So this is the Lord of Speech. The Lord of Mind has to do with manipulating your mind in pleasurable ways. So for instance, there are forms of meditation which lead to blissful trance states. Buddhists, these are called the dhyanas in Sanskrit, or the jhanas in Pali, for those of you who know the Southeast Asian tradition. Buddhism is very wary of those because you can get stuck in them for a long time, and they are not enlightenment. They are not waking up. They're simply like taking a drug. You focus your mind one-pointedly on an object, and eventually you achieve a trance. So these are the three forms of the Lord of materialism that we are giving up when we take refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. And this is non-theistic. Again, you can understand what that means. It means that we don't subscribe to theism, but it's not atheistic, because that would be another belief. That's a belief that God does not exist, and Buddhists wouldn't bother with that. Since we possess what is known as Buddha nature, this is the enlightened mind, enlightened intelligence, we don't have to borrow somebody else's glory. It's very much up to us. And this is one of the key doctrines of Buddhism. And it's also one of the most important, that each one of us is already exactly what we need to be, what we should be, a Buddha. It's just that we have lost confidence in that. We have gotten involved in byways. And what this path is about really is reconnecting with the confidence of being enlightened. That confidence is called Buddha nature. It goes by a couple of different names, at least. Tathagata means Buddha nature, the essence of those who have gone beyond confusion. It's also referred to as bodhicitta. Bodhi means awake. Chitta means mind or heart, because in the Indian physiognomy, your heart and your mind both reside here in the middle of the chest, right below the sternum. That's the heart chakra. So bodhicitta is really awakened intelligence. We find that everything in our lives is a constant process of learning and discovery, and that's part of this path. And the Dharma is passionlessness, which in this case means not grasping or holding on to or trying to possess. It means non-aggression. We're on to the Dharma. I'm sorry, I should have announced that. The second refuge. In fact, taking refuge in the Dharma, yeah. Let's stop for a second. And any comments or questions? So, Sarah.
When you called on me, I was completely lost in thought. So I just want to say I see the benefit of the Sangha and the teacher, and now I am noticing every time I get lost in thought because I'm afraid you might call on me again, and it's really keeping me at that. So thank you.
The trick with being lost in thought is that when you're not, when you come back, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't criticize yourself, because that's another big thought. You just see it, and you're back. And we could do this hundreds of times during the day. It's coming back from dreams. But the main thing is not to hurt yourself, not to beat yourself up with it. Not to say, oh, I'm a terrible meditator, I'm a terrible Buddhist. You're not. That's just more of the same. So we talked about the Dharma being passionless. Passionlessness cuts through this small goal-oriented vision, so that everything becomes purely a learning process. This enables us to relate with our lives fully and properly. And our lives may contain suffering, unhappiness, and we relate with that. We come back to it instead of being caught in it in the endless cycle of self-improvement. We can let that go and do what is necessary, each one of us. Some of us have harder paths than others for one reason or another. And really, the essence of this teaching is that we tread that path with a awake mind, without complaint, if you can, and with appreciation for the opportunities. He says there's a constant ebb and flow of phenomena that we can't hang on to. That realization, the understanding, the fluctuation that goes on and working with it is the meaning of taking refuge in the Dharma, that we are going to continually work with the elements of our lives, the people, the events, the responsibilities, with clarity, without complaint, without, what's the word, ratiocinating about them too much. He says this means that we face and can experience pain and pleasure of life very directly in an ordinary way. Everything takes place nakedly and in an ordinary way. This is the way we will experience our lives in this state of mind. Taking refuge in the Dharma means relating to everything that happens, from the little splinter in your finger to your granddad's committing suicide. I thought that was a pretty strange one, but there it is. In your name, from the littlest to the biggest, is part of the natural process, just facets of life. So everything that happens is just a facet of life. And really, there's nothing bigger or smaller. Our awareness levels the field. Just being aware. He says, by study, this is produced, this effect, this understanding through your study, through your experience with your teachers, and especially by meditation experience. In meditation, we're constantly coming back to awareness. We're constantly giving up the entertainment of ego. Ego is always looking for entertainment of some kind. He says, whatever goes on in your mind is a learning situation, all of it. That is the path. It is the only way. It is the only thing that we can work with. So I'll stop there again. Any comments or questions? How are you finding this? Steve?
Um, I had so when you were talking about Buddhism is not theistic and it's not atheistic, would it be kind of agnostic, or is that a totally different thing
That's different
altogether?
too. That's different too. Agnosticism is the posture of saying, I don't know if God exists or doesn't exist. Buddhism wants nothing to do with beliefs of any kind. They're not the point. What the point is our immediate experience right now in this moment. And words, any kind of words, like words that make up beliefs, are just pointers. Sometimes in Tibetan, the word for word is actually the word tag, in English, namdak in Tibetan. It's a tag. It's as though you have the experience of this desk or this computer screen, and you put the word computer screen on it. You write it on a tag and scotch tape it to the screen. That's what words are. There was a great Buddhist, Western Buddhist scholar named Herbert Gunther when Rinpoche arrived here, and I studied his writings. He was very good. So we went off the deep end, but he said that words in Buddhism are regarded just as useful ways to take things. They have no absolute truth whatsoever. There's anybody here ever watch Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon? Yeah, Chris has. Yeah, you seen it? Yeah. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. But you may not like it. Bruce Lee was a martial artist, and he was really spectacularly good. And he made these very simplistic movies. But his movie Enter the Dragon. At the beginning of the movie, he's standing with a student of his. He's a teacher, and Bruce Lee was an amazing martial artist. And he's standing with this student, and he's talking about the moon, which is up in the sky. And he says, "Do you see the moon?" And the guy goes, "Oh, yes." And he says something about, "Don't mistake your finger for the reality of the moon itself. If you do, you will miss all the heavenly glory." And he says it in a thick Chinese accent. And if we mistake the words are just like fingers pointing to the reality that we are experiencing. Not anybody else. More. Once you take refuge, there are lots of people like me around who've been practicing for long periods of time, and you can get guidance and direction. And also, having taken refuge in the Bodhisattva vows, which comes next, Trungpa Rinpoche specified that you had to have at least 3 months between the two vows. You can't take them at the same time. Beyond that is the Vajrayana Tantra in all its magnificent color. That fellow behind me, you can't really see him very well because it's dark, but he's on that tanka hanging on the wall. That's the wrathful aspect of Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava went to Tibet from India in the 8th century. There was a king who had become a Buddhist, and he wanted to invite people to come and bring Buddhism to Tibet. His name was Trisong Detsen. And first he brought a teacher from India who was basically a Mahayana teacher. His name was Shantarakshita. And Shantarakshita converted a number of people to being monks and nuns, and then tried to start building the first temple and monastery in Tibet, in Lhasa. But the problem was that the local deities of the local religion, which is called Bun, that's usually spelled P or B, with an umlaut over an O, N, Bun, the Bun religion, and it was a theistic religion. And the deities of that religion would come out by night and tear down the work that the monks and nuns had done by day. So Trisong Detsen, the king, asked Shantarakshita, what should we do? And Shantarakshita said, there's this fellow in India named Padmasambhava. He can do this. Send for him. And we do a chant in our meditation every day to Padmasambhava. How's it? Start, doesn't matter, it's the second chant we do. 7-line supplication. You who have realized the Dharmata of what is, with oceans of skillful deeds of a Buddha's son. No, I'm sorry, long chant. Doesn't matter. You look at the second one we do is Padmasambhava. He manifested in many ways, but the recorded version of him has 8 manifestations. That's one of them. That's his wrathful manifestation. It's called Dorje Trollo, which means indestructible, wrathful one. And his main job, Dorje Trollo's main job, is to kill the demon of self-attack, of self-hatred, because it's the worst of all of them. If you hate yourself, you're no good for other people. And that's his main job. I heard a teacher once, he said, his job is to kill. No, not kill, butcher that demon. So finally, we get to take refuge in the Sangha as companionship. I'm sorry if I sound a little odd. I had an operation a week ago, and they've got me on drugs still, and I think I'm still recovering from the anesthesia. So I apologize for that. And I feel like my voice is a little weird and everything. So we take refuge in the Sangha as companionship, and everyone's struggling to tread the path. We're able to act as reminders for each other, provide feedback for each other. It's a continual learning process, continual feedback, and friendship. And I feel like just in this funny online Sangha that we've got here, Path of Awakening Buddhist Center, real friendship has evolved. It's amazing. It says, each member of the Sangha is an individual who is on the path in a slightly different way, or not so slightly, from all the others. It is because you get constant feedback of all kinds, negative and positive, encouraging and discouraging. These very rich resources become available to you when you take refuge in the Sangha, the fellowship of students. So I'm a teacher. I'm basically what's called for you, a Kalyana Mitra. That means a spiritual friend. It's that simple. And through me comes the lineage. I'm not enlightened like Milarepa and Gampopa and Tusum Khenpa. Tusum Khenpa, by the way, was the first Karmapa, first head of the Kagyu lineage. And his name means knower of the 3 times. 2 is times, son is 3. Khenpa means knower. So when you do the chant and you say, Tusum Khenpa, now you know. So as part of the Sangha, you are willing to work with your loneliness in a group. The Sangha is made up of thousands of people who are alone together. And that is the key. We're all alone together, working together with our own loneliness and our own aloneness. Dedicated people who are working on themselves alone together. It is very real. And I have such respect for everybody treading your path. It's marvelous. It's an inspiration. We can be inspired by each other, by the courage that people have. Now he talks about 3 changes: change of attitude, change of mark, and a change of name. Change of attitude is just what I've been talking about a little bit. You're developing a sense of sympathy and non-aggression for yourself and toward the world. Really, that's what this path is: a sense of resonance and sympathy, kindness. It's absolutely essential that you develop kindness toward yourself. That's the opposite of what that fellow back there represents. Your attitude changes from aggression to non-aggression, and it's the absence of battle. We are not battling. We're not trying to change ourselves fundamentally. Rather, we're trying to discover ourselves. Discover that part of us that we've covered over with self-hatred and self-doubt. So you develop an awareness that allows you to be friendly to yourself, and then you can extend that to all sentient beings. If you're not friendly to yourself, if you're self-attacking, you're not much good to others either. It says you can be very friendly and gentle to yourself and other people and relate with the world, which seems to be the basic point of the Buddhist teachings. That's the basic point, is to be a friendly, helpful citizen of the world. You begin to show signs of sanity that are already within you. This is the change of mark. Gentleness and sympathy are taking place. You begin to change. It's funny that changing, we might wish to change and think about changing and try to change, but it really just happens very gradually, maybe not so gradually, it depends on you, and effortlessly. If you put yourself in position, these changes will just happen. And by position, I mean meditation, study, and being kind to people around you. Those 3 qualities. Meditation is developing wisdom, compassion, and skillful means. Study is like what we're doing here now, will lead you on. And compassion for the people around you will make you happy if you can rouse yourself to be of benefit to others. Be kind and helpful. It actually produces joy. So we've talked about change of mark, your name, the sanity and gentleness and sympathy. And finally, there's going to be a change of name. You can use your refuge name or not as you please. Most people don't, but there are people in our Sangha who do. So for instance, if you were to come to the Tuesday night class, there's a fellow there whose real name is Alejandro, but he goes by his refuge name of Lodro Nima. And there have been many people many of my friends who adopted their refuge names. And this name is kind of a reminder for you, a message connected with the practice of meditation. And it should produce kindness and gentleness and confidence and awakeness. And with that name, some sense of your individual style in approaching the Dharma. Hopefully your name will do that. And what's going to happen is we're going to have the ceremony in a couple of weeks. And I haven't set the date yet because I want to communicate with people. And before that ceremony, you will be emailed a certificate, which will have the Tibetan and the English for your name and it will say the refuge certificate, and it'll have a seal on it, and my name in English and in Tibetan, my refuge name as the preceptor, and your name will be dead center. And you can do with that what you will. Some people put it on their wall, but you will need it printed out for the ceremony, because there'll be a point in the ceremony which you hold up. So, does anybody here know how to do a prostration? Sarah, you do, don't you? Could you demonstrate a prostration?
I don't know if I have room. Do you want me to do a full one?
Huh?
Like a full prostration on the ground?
Yeah, just start,
Okay.
here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha.
That's it. And then she's bending down, and at a full prostration, she would lie out flat on the floor and then stand up back up again. Now, many of the people in this group, there are variations. Can you show a 3/4 prostration or where you just bend at the waist?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha.
Yeah. That for people who, one reason or another, don't want to do full prostrations. I couldn't do one anymore. And that will be part of the ceremony. Yeah, Jim Privileges says, when you do that, you're surrendering your ego trips, your personal clingings of all kinds, so that you can begin to tune into this path. I felt about him that he was utterly non-self-referential, just never thought about himself. He was constantly awake, as we all can be, to what was going on around him and responding to that. Have I told everybody here the story of the game?
Yes,
Who said yes?
I did.
You did. But anybody else? Sarah, you heard the story of the game? No? I'll tell you a brief story. Well, let's finish this first. We're almost to the end. Right, we are. So the refuge vow ceremony, you'll prostrate to the shrine, which represents our heritage and the lineage of those who have transmitted awakened mind. It's really amazing that people have passed this down from one person to the next over the centuries, over 2,600 years. So, yeah, you'll repeat the refuge vow 3 times then while kneeling, if you can kneel, and if you can't, if you have physical infirmity, you can sit in a chair. Otherwise, you kneel with one knee down and one knee up, hands in anjali, and we'll take refuge. He says, you're being infected with the commitment to the Buddha Dharma. Buddhism is transmitted into your system. It's very physical. And then the third time when you're taking refuge, when you say, I take refuge in the Sangha, I will snap my fingers like that, and the transmission, he said, how does he put it? A moment of real transmission takes place when it enters your system, and that's the point at which you become a member, a part of the lineage. There are many lineages. What happened was that after the Buddha died, the Sangha fractured. This has happened over and over again in the course of Buddhism. And the period after his death was called the period of the 18 schools. And each school had a little different understanding of what the path was and what the doctrine was. That's all only gone on, that fracturing of the Sangha. He says, at that moment, when the finger snap takes place, the sperm, so to speak, enters your system and you become part of the lineage. From that moment onward, you are a follower of the practicing lineage of the Kagyu. That's one of the four main sects of Tibetan Buddhism, and we are entering the Kagyu sect. The other two are the Nyingma and the Gelugpa and the Sakya. Now, Trungpa Rinpoche was Kagyu, but his root teacher, it's what's called the root guru, was Nyingma. He was a man named Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen. And so Rinpoche embodied both those lineages. At that particular point, when you've taken refuge, the energy, the power, and the blessings of basic sanity that has existed in the lineage for 2,500 years, 26, in an unbroken tradition and discipline from the time of the Buddha, all that enters your system, and you finally become a full-fledged follower of Buddha Dharma. You are a future living Buddha at that point. That's it. It's so quiet. Comments, questions, complaints? Yes, Mariana. You're muted, Mariana. You have to unmute.
One thing that I've learned along my journey is active Buddhism. This comes from Joan Halifax and her, I don't know if any of you know who she is, but she runs something called Upaya Institute in Santa Fe. She talks about active Buddhism. Active, exactly. And so for many, many years, I have devoted myself to be in service, which goes along with compassion and kindness and all of that. But being in service allows me to express that in a very powerful way and feel so much joy from that, really being active.
That's wonderful.
In what I know. So I just wanted to share that with the group in case any of you are interested in that.
Yeah, Joan Halifax. She was here, and we met her in the early 1970s, briefly.
Yeah.
With her then husband, who I told you about, Stanislav Grof.
That's right, Stanislav Grof, right.
Yeah. There was something that I wanted to comment on, but it slipped my mind now, what you just said. She founded this group in Santa Fe. It's called Upaya. Oh well, it's gone. Tyler, you haven't said anything. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I have is there ever a time that thoughts are useful?
No. Seems to me that they are, but Trungpa Rinpoche said not. Shall I read you a passage that, let me read you a passage from one of his seminary notes. Hold on a second.
That's a great question, Tyler.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
We each have to come to our own decision about that. We can take the teaching and listen to the teaching, but ultimately, each one of us has to decide. Here's Trungpa Rinpoche. See, every year for about 15 or 16 years, he took his students away for 3 months at a time, one each year, for study and practice. He gave talks, and those talks have been digested into 3 volumes. This is the Tantric Path of Indestructible Wakefulness, the 3rd volume. So it's pretty advanced and uncompromising. He says he's talking about a union, and that's not we'll get to the point. The union, or bringing together of the teacher and yourself, makes it possible for you to work together. It is the experience of Tokpa Gak, the cessation or stopping of thoughts. That's what happens when you have a real meeting of the minds with the teacher. Thoughts stop, just clear awareness. This is called by many names in different Buddhist traditions. It's called Satori in the Zen tradition. It's called in the Indian Buddhist tradition, meeting of the minds. It has other words. He says, the cessation or stopping of thoughts. By stopping thoughts, we are not talking about becoming zombies. You have to be quite careful about that. We cut conceptualization, but the natural functioning mind and general awareness still goes on continuously. I can see lots of people looking at this screen and not thinking, just clear eyes. And yet you're understanding, you're listening. In fact, that general awareness and functioning mind is cultivated further by the vipassana experience. And that's what we practice here when we practice meditation. We're practicing vipassana, coming into awareness in the present moment. Later on, it becomes the upaya, that's the skillful method, of the Vajrayana disciplines as well. So that particular aspect of mind could be sharpened. And here we go. There is never a need for conceptual thinking. I'll repeat that. There is never a need for conceptual thinking. Nobody needs it. It is absolutely unnecessary because it produces pain and the unnecessary fortification of ego. That is what conceptual mind is for, to build your ego fortification. It is for me, for I. It is about how to be I, how to build myself up. And that is not necessary. There could be a world without I. You can contemplate that. But it means living a very different kind of life. You're sort of here without purpose, without aim, without fear and hope, fear and for whatever they may be, for the past and the future. I remember when I first met Trungpa Rinpoche, he invited me to come and visit him in his room anytime. We had made a powerful connection. I was very loath to do it. I was sort of embarrassed. Excuse me. But one day I did. And I went to the door of his little bedroom. This is a Tail of the Tiger, now Karma Chilling in Vermont. And I knocked. What I didn't know was that there was an event happening on the other side of that door. A local Christian minister had invited Trungpa Rinpoche to be on his Sunday morning TV show as a guest. Rinpoche had said yes to the invitation, and the minister had sent over a questionnaire. This was going to take place in St. Johnsbury. And he sent over a questionnaire for Rinpoche to fill out so that he could get a better idea of who his guest was. As I knocked on the door, one of Rinpoche's students, Fran Lewis, was reading him the questions and writing down his answers. What I didn't know, and I have to tell you that before I met Trungpa Rinpoche, and even after for a while, I was described as searching for it with a capital I under every rock and bush. That's what one of his students said of me back then. This is 53 years ago. So I knocked on the door. Door swings open. Rinpoche is sitting on the bed, on his own bed, and he turns and looks at me like that over his shoulder, and at the same time delivers the answer to Franny, to the question, what is the purpose of life? He looks at me, and delivers his answer. It is as follows: the purpose of life is to have no purpose. If you do have a purpose, you just make a nuisance of yourself, to yourself and everyone else. This is a sort of one way of describing enlightened mind. Just being here. You can experiment with it by just coming present without thought. Watch your thoughts evaporate. It doesn't, you don't have to do it all at once. Most people don't. It's a great question. I think, sorry about it. I'm just having a lot of physical issues here. Anymore. Conversation is the best. Jill, how are you feeling about this?
I just think that, John, it's a little disingenuous to talk about no purpose when you've devoted your life to bringing this gift to us, just like Trungpa Rinpoche devoted his life. Now, certainly, I would call that purpose.
I'll speak.
And you communicate through, you know, you say concepts are absolutely useless and empty, but that's all that we have at our, I mean, that is all we can use to convey what cannot be totally conveyed through language, but it's all we have to function as a pointer. And so concepts do have a purpose. I mean, we have a purpose, and there is a reason to think in terms of concepts, because they are pointers. They are not the thing that we are ultimately trying to reach, but they lead the way.
They do, and they help us connect to other people and be of service to other people.
All right, but what about the point of the, okay, there is no, do not have a purpose. I really have resistance to that thought.
Well, for me, I associate having a purpose with a feeling of self-existence, that I want to fulfill my purpose.
John, service, purpose to me.
But service, it can come from the heart. It doesn't have to come from the mind. It's an act of compassion. And it really can make the world warmer when you help other people. It's really the pursuit of compassion, opening your heart, connecting with others. Yeah. I mean, all these Buddhist teachers who handed down the teachings over the years in conceptual form. Oops, Stephen, I'll stop here, Stephen.
I'm wondering if it's more like you're not bound by it. It's like a tool you could use, but you don't have to. Kind of like,
Perfect.
Like I'm a teacher, and I could say there's a new teaching skill that I see and I want to adopt it. I'm like, okay, then I want to learn how to use it. And then all of a sudden, like, I don't know, the class is canceled and I can't learn that new skill. It doesn't, I'm not suddenly a bad teacher, or it's just like, I could use it, I could not use it, but I'm not bound by it. You know what I mean? Is that kind of what he's going for? Is that the idea?
Yeah, they say useful ways to take things. There are two truths in Buddhism, the absolute truth and the relative truth. The relative truth is words. and it's pointing to the fact that I'm wearing a black shirt. It's relative truth. The absolute truth is what you experience beyond thought or without thought. Just this, through the senses and the mind.
I'd like to address.
I'm sorry, Mariana. Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to address what Jill is talking about. And I think it's just semantics, really, because my purpose, and I've had this purpose for many, many years, is to be of service, to make a difference. And that comes from the heart. It's not a concept. It's not conceptual to me. And I don't think that the word is that important. It's where you're coming from. That's what I have to say about that. It's your intention.
I'm a playwright, and I make a living by conveying ideas. And it is difficult for me to accept that that ideas are empty of value. I mean, okay, John, we do have to negotiate. We do have to negotiate the relative world in addition to the ultimate world. And
you're right.
We do need pointers. We do need pointers in the relative world. Pointers that can ease our way during the time that we are spending in that reality, and also pointers toward the greater reality that is our ultimate deliverance from the everyday I was about to say jail that we're in, but we do need ideas. We really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trungpa Rinpoche himself wrote plays and poems, lots of poems. And I think he wrote about 4 or 5 plays. I've got copies of them here. They're pretty strange.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. And he invited, we had here in Boulder on the Mudra Theater Conference. One of his Rinpoche students was a fellow named Jean-Claude Van Italy. That name ring any bells? Yeah. Yeah, Jean-Claude was a very devoted student of Trungpa Rinpoche. And together they created a theater conference here in Boulder. And Jean-Claude invited all his friends, and they invited other friends, and people came from both coasts. And it went on for about a week. It was a lot of fun, with people demonstrating their plays and doing readings and actings. So I think he valued the word. It's part of art, part of the beauty and the celebration of life.
We have to navigate in 2 different realms. And it is disingenuous to say that we can just forget that we have to get in our car and drive and, go to the supermarket and, deal with our kid who's being a brat or what. I mean, we have things to deal with and things that we are reaching toward, and we know that they're there, and we want to arrive there, and with any blessing and effort and goodwill we will arrive there. But we have this whole time that we have on this planet, we are ricocheting between the two, and that gives rise to ideas and concepts and there has to be conversation. There has to be ongoing conversation about this. It can't all be Vipassana.
Okay, we'll see. Each one of us will discover. Somebody else?
Oh, well, then I guess, John, when I'm in, okay, my last play just closed. When my next play opens, I guess you won't go to it because it's not
I won't go to it?
right, because it's not Vipassana.
Oh, please.
Ah,
I would love to see your next play.
all right.
Really would. Tyler, did you have something else to say?
No, I'm just absorbing and listening. This is new to me. I've been, I think, with you for less than a month now. And I'm just absorbing and feeling very privileged.
Yeah,
John,
we all are.
may I ask a question? It sounds like perhaps I don't have the right attitude to take the vow.
No, you can absolutely not. You have the right attitude. You have to decide that. But as far as I'm concerned,
I do. I believe I do, but I just wanted to hear that from you because
absolutely. Oh, yeah. I treasure our relationship, our friendship,
mhm.
truly. And I think that this path will be good and helpful for you. And your arguing with me here about the concept is very intelligent. It's good to test everything that you are taught, not accept it on blind faith at all.
Yes, isn't that what the Buddha said?
Yeah, I guess so. He did.
Yes.
I
Try
think
it out
lots
for
of you.
yourself, see what
Huh?
works.
Say that again?
He said, try it all out for yourself, see what works. Don't take my word for it.
Indeed. Is it Suzanne? You got SJ.
Yeah, it's Susan.
Yeah, Susan. Anything you'd like to?
No, I've just been enjoying the conversation, and I always enjoy learning more about the Dharma, and I'm looking forward to finally taking the vow.
Finally. Have you been on
Yeah.
a long time?
Now, I haven't been on long, just for 3 years, but I did go to the Warriors Assembly this summer, and
Who led it?
who led it? Gayland and Janet.
Janet Salinchus.
Yes, thank you for saying her last name. I would not have been able to say it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she said it several times, but it's one of those things. But yes, and I always find it very interesting. I'm kind of at the place now where I want to go back, and I've mentioned to you that I've gone through the Hinayana, and I'm at the Lojong at the Mahayana, and I kind of like to go back and reread all that stuff and relearn some of that and go through some of the classes again before I move on to the Vajrayana. Though my sister has moved on now.
She's moved on?
Yeah.
How so?
You'd have to talk to her about that and who she's gone through. She went through somebody, and I had the opportunity, but I just didn't feel I was ready yet. But I would like to take the vow, and so I'm very happy that you're offering it.
Okay. I will talk to her. She's a lovely person.
Thank you.
I just met her in the last few months. Tyler, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, two things. One, just sorry, I'm trying to. There we go. Just kind of what came to mind about the concepts thing we were just talking about. If I remember right, in the Hinayana, the Buddha compared the path to a raft. And once you get to the other shore, you even let the raft go. So I feel like the kind of how I view the concepts is like the concepts help us make up the raft to get to where we're going. And then once we get there, we even let go of the raft itself. So I can find that teaching, but that's a teaching from the Buddha and the Hinayana. So that came to mind, just like two sides of the same thing. And then the question I had was sometimes, like, even this weekend, I was really caught in a lot of neuroses and a lot of thinking, and even just trying to come back to the practice was not shaking the mental looping. And I was wondering kind of if Trungpa, or if there's different techniques outside of the main practice that are used to kind of break really incessant thought loops. It's yeah, or if it's just being with it, I guess.
I think there are other practices, but this is the main one, to sit and meditate. And you don't, when you're thinking, if you say, darn it, I'm thinking again, stop, you're in a battle. Rather, when you realize that you're thinking, just make the thought an object of awareness for as long as it's there. And it won't be very long because it'll just evaporate. But that's a much more kind and relaxed way of approaching it. In other words, don't beat yourself up for having thoughts at all. You might be off in a dream. Then you suddenly realize, I'm dreaming. I'm with my mother in Schenectady or whatever it may be, and you realize that and you see it. Just see it. That's all there is to it. We're changing our allegiance from the purposes of thought to awareness in the present moment. Sarah.
Can you tell us the story of the game?
The game? Oh. Nobody here knows the story of the game, right?
I do.
Who? Oh, you do, Jill.
I've heard it 3 times.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, I'll tell it because the other people are going to enjoy it. Early on, when Trungpa Rinpoche came to Colorado, we used to get together and play parlor games, charades, that kind of stuff. Once in a while, all the students. Somebody introduced a game that we had no name for, so it was just called The Game. And the way it works is, you get a group of people together, and preferably, pretty much about each other. That makes the game better when you know something about the person's life and past. One person is chosen to be it, and they're sent out of the room. Then the person who knows what the game is explains it to the people who are left. What the game is that when we're going to call that person back in, and their job is to figure out what the game is. And here's what the game is. They're going to ask us questions to try and help figure out what the game is. We answer all those questions as though we were that person. So, if Mariana was it, and she went out of the room, and she came back in, and she said to me, "What color shirt are you wearing?" I would say I've kind of got bare skin all over up here, because that's what she's got, a dress. Because and
It's hot in Tucson.
it's hot and Tucson's great.
It's hot.
Yeah. Or if I'm it and I come back in and I ask what Tanya, how old are you? She would answer, if she knew, I'm 79 years old. That's how old I am. So you see, if this is the game, and it's up to the person who is it to figure out that everybody is being them, answering the questions as though they were the person.
Game.
Now, it can go long, it can go short. If you ask very concrete questions like, what color shirt are you wearing? That helps the person get it much faster. We always warn them, the person who's it, don't ask questions about the game itself or about anything really abstract, because you might. I remember it was very common. A person would get frustrated and they'd turn to somebody who was the person who was it and would say, "Do you really understand what this game is about?" And the person would say, "No," because they were being the questioner. We played this game a lot. And I saw all different kinds of reactions and manifestations of being it, including one woman when we were at Tail of the Tiger, and we played it in a little room, and she was a person we all knew was very unhappy and self-attacking person. And someone asked her, the person, she asked one of the people, "Do you like me?" And the person answered, "Not so much." It got kind of nasty because that was her attitude towards herself,
Right.
that she demonstrated. So finally, we played it with Trungpa Rinpoche. That was a revelation. We were sitting in one of the bedrooms here in Boulder, Colorado, in his house. And for a bunch of us, he was on a mattress, I think, on the floor. We didn't have any furniture in those days. And we're all sitting around. And we explained the game to him, and he starts asking questions, to try and figure out what the game is. It went on for 2 hours. He just couldn't get it. And they kept asking one question after the next. Finally, at that time, he was always drank alcohol, all through his life. And at that time, he was drinking a very strange drink. He was drinking Mai Tais, which was kind of unusual. When I met him, he was drinking Johnny Walker Red whiskey. But he was drinking Mai Tais in those days. So he asked someone in one group, "What's your favorite drink?" And the person said, "Well, right now I'm kind of partial to Mai Tais." Well, nobody else was drinking Mai Tais. And suddenly I saw this look on his face, like, I'm the one who drinks Mai Tais, Then he turned to another person and he said, "What is your favorite style of interior decoration?" And the fellow said, or the one person said, "I like the simplicity of Zen, punctuated by splashes of Tibetan color." And that got it. And you could see it register finally after a couple of hours that he got what the game was about. And he started laughing. He was laughing so hard, he had tears coming down his face, and he was rolling on the mattress, holding his sides. Yeah. But in retrospect, I think the reason that he had such a difficult time getting it is because he was so non-referential, self-referential. He just didn't think about himself. He didn't bounce back to me. He was just always interested in what the other person was presenting and saying, whoever came in front of him. And we have that to a certain degree. And then we retreat into our own caves, as it were. Caves of depression, caves of scheming, whatever they may be. Caves of unhappiness. So that's why I told you that story, because he was an example of how you can live your life in responsiveness to this beautiful world. Well, maybe we should end. What do you think? It's time. 7:02 here, wherever you are. It's 6:02 or 9:02. So what I'll do is I'll put the chants up, and everybody is muted except Jill. That's good. Okay. And Mariana, I'm going to mute you, just so we don't get cacophony. And you can all chant along if you wish. This is the dedication of merit that we'll do, which is us being generous to all of the sentient beings. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. This second chant, by the way, by the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, is a Shambhala dedication of merit. The first one is a Buddhist. This is a Shambhalian. Well, thank you all. And I'll be sending out an email about when we will schedule this. And there'll be some people coming to renew their vows too. Sarah, you've already taken the vow, haven't you?
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Anybody
Thank
else who is taking the vow? No.
Thank you.
Okay.
John,
Yes, Jill.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Tanya, Carolyn, and Mariana.
John, should I have stayed? I didn't quite, I don't think I've stayed on Monday nights but before. And I was just wondering if
Oh
it
no,
was a
this is unusual that we do something on Monday night.
I don't know if I belong here. I mean, I love to absorb, to learn.
Well, you only belong here, and I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's fine. It's fine that you are here. But do you intend to take refuge?
I hadn't thought about it, but I was reviewing what I've been learning mostly in the last month in the way you're doing it. And it's what it's what I said the other night. It all feels like home. Everything feels like I'm coming home. And I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, personally, I very much value your presence.
Oh,
And
thank you.
it's true. And I hope that you, I don't know, that you would take refuge, but it has to be a genuine inspiration on your part.
Yes. I was kind of checking my heart to see. And I went, as I said, I went back to I'm home. Okay. I don't have a very good memory. I never had. It's not age, but I'm concerned for the ceremony that I wouldn't be able to learn what I was supposed to do. that I would make mistakes.
Oh, this is the mishap lineage. That's what it's called, Kagyu lineage. What counts most of all is your motivation and intention.
Okay.
And if you want to devote your rest of your life to the Buddhist path, among other things, that's it.
Yeah, it's as new as I am to Buddhism, really. I just, I'm starting to remember, I'm starting to learn, and the path resonates for me. The path is home.
I personally, I would love for you to take refuge. Personally, I want it to be your decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll sleep on it. I won't think about it. I'll sleep on it.
So, and if you do decide you want to do it, I want to put Carolyn, what's the rest of your name?
Cornish, Cornish, like the chicken.
Got it. Carolyn, Cornish.
Yeah.
And let's see. Okay, let me know. Think about it for however long you wish, but let me know soon if you can,
Yep.
next
Yep.
week.
I will for sure.
Because then what I'm going to do is to give you a name that I think expresses both who you are now and your potential. And you've got a refuge name, and you'll get a certificate, and then we'll have the ceremony.
Oh, I would love that. I'm saying yes right now. I'm
You-
getting croissants. Yeah. But I'm saying yes now, and I will email you shortly.
Okay, and if you have a change of heart, that's fine too.
Who knows, and I doubt it.
Okay. Time is getting short for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should make the best of it.
Yep. Yeah. I never wanted to be alive. And through this Sangha, through your teaching, Rothberg too, I'm starting to get a feeling that life is worthwhile in a way I never had.
That's
I
true.
just, I just never thought that was all worth it. And I'm starting to, which is shocking to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and meditate some more
Okay.
and
Bravo to you.
be grateful. I'm just so grateful. Wow.
Me too. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Let's say
Thank
good. Bye.
Good night.